Bandwidth for changelog is provided by Fastly. Learn more at fastly.com, and we're hosted on Linode servers. Head to linode.com/changelog.
Hi, I'm Liz Rice, and it's go time.
It's Go Time, a weekly podcast where we discuss interesting topics around the Go programming language, the community, and everything in between. If you currently write Go or aspire to, this is the show for you. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Go Time. Today's episode is number 56. On the show today, we have myself, Eric. Brian Kettleson is also on. Say hello, Brian.
Hello, Brian.
I need to come up with something different just to stop you from saying that.
Are we back to that? I thought that was over.
Then we also have Carlicia Pinto on the show.
Hi, everybody.
And our special guest today, we actually talked a little bit about on our GopherCon retrospect as one of our favorite talks. Please welcome Liz Rice.
Hello.
Yay!
It was so nice what you said about my talks at GopherCon. That was one of the episodes of Go Time that I've heard, and it was, I was blown away by the comments on that.
Oh, you actually listened to that?
I did.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
It was, I think it was definitely one of our favorites. And I really enjoyed your container talk too. Was that Golang UK you gave that at?
Yeah, it was last year.
Yeah, that was, I really loved that one too, because it really broke down kind of what a container is. There's a lot of confusion a lot of times when people get into containers and they try to kind of compare it more to a lightweight virtual machine rather than like just a highly configured process. And I think implementing one kind of from scratch really kind of demonstrates that.
Right. I mean, it's. I don't think there's a better way of really seeing what's going on than to see the code. You know, for people who understand code, it's the clearest way. I always find it much easier to see code than, I don't know, to try and understand what people mean when they draw boxes. You know, show me the code.
Yeah, boxes only get you so far. I mean, that I think is enough to hook you. Like, oh, this could be interesting. How might I use this? But when it comes down to kind of truly understanding and implementing something, seeing the code is where it's at.
Yeah, I think so. I'm exaggerating about the boxes. Some boxes are really good.
Who was it? Was it Bob Martin who made the comment about architecture is just about drawing boxes with arrows going in one direction or something like that? So for anybody who might not be familiar with you and kind of your work, do you want to just kind of give a brief background?
Sure. Okay. So I am, I suppose, an engineer by trade. I spent a lot of my career working on network protocols, and I started off writing in C for a very long time. I had a few years where I stopped writing code, and I went and did product management for a few companies. Some of them you might have heard of, like Skype and Last.fm. And then I did some consultancy for a few years, and then it turned out people had invented much more interesting languages than C, and I kind of got back into programming again. And now I am a technology evangelist, is my job title, for a company called Aqua Security, and we help enterprises with securing their containerized deployments. But I basically have a really, really, really fun job of kind of demonstrating things and trying to explain what's going on in various bits of technology, hopefully with some kind of, relationship to security and to containers. But, we're pretty relaxed about how, some of my talks don't really talk about security very much at all. And it's really fun.
I think understanding things at like a more in-depth level helps with security though too. So I'd kind of argue that it's beneficial from a security standpoint.
I definitely think it is, and particularly with the world of containers, where if people are thinking about them as if they're virtual machines, well, they're not really thinking about it the right way, and there's so many you know different kind of insecurities. Fundamentally, if you want the security of a virtual machine, use a virtual machine. Um, but containers are really interesting as well from the perspective of microservices. So if you can break your code into microservices, you've got these much smaller components that do a much more limited set of things. So it's easier to profile them and learn what they're supposed to do, and what files they're supposed to access, and what network connections they're supposed to have, and all that kind of thing. So from a security perspective, you can really learn about running behavior much more easily in a containerized architecture than you could with like big monolithic kind of virtual machines. So I think that's really exciting.
But talk to us more about that, because when I think about it, I think that at an individual level, the security issues would be much easier to grasp and comprehend for a microservice, for a single microservice. But when you have so many, it sounds that would be more difficult. So how does the container help with that? Contrast that, please, with how it would be with a virtual machine.
Yeah, I think it's really about decomposing the problem the same way that the microservices, from a software architecture point of view, can decompose the problem. The fact that you've now got these more kind of isolated, well, we'll say containers, you've got a different problem in that you need to keep track of what each of those different containers is doing and whether it's behaving the way it's supposed to. But I think, particularly from looking at runtime, it should be easier to spot anomalous behavior than if you've got a lot of things going on. A really good example is if you've got a microservice that is supposed to, maybe it's product search, so it's supposed to look up products from a product database. So it only ever kind of reads from the database. And so if you were to catch that microservice trying to write something to a database, you'd know that it was something that isn't supposed to happen, whether it's nefarious or kind of somebody wrote some bad code somewhere. But I think that's a really good sort of model for thinking, oh yeah, we can reason about what these different microservices should do. Did that help?
Yeah, and I'm thinking, so is that a container level security gateway, I'd say?
Yeah, so Aqua, we have a product that kind of covers the whole life cycle of containers, really. So we do the image scanning and looking for vulnerabilities. And in some ways, that's more complex for containers just because you've got more instances of different pieces of code. And I guess there's a few other bits and pieces, but the bit that I think is just fascinating is runtime profiling and learning what the containers are supposed to do and being able to alert when something unexpected happens.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking about, and I think you touched on that with so many microservices and so many images and maybe even so many containers. You would need something like what your company does that would help manage the security for all of that as a group.
Yeah, and it's one of the I've been with Aqua for, I guess, coming up 6 months now, and it's one of the things that really excited me about joining them was, I can really see how this product is needed. And I hadn't come from a security background; I'd come from a development background and a containers background. But seeing seeing the product and seeing it catching potential exploits, just as they happen, thought, yeah, this seems really important and valuable, and it's kind of fun to work on a product that people pay money for.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is done in Go as well.
Yeah, so some of it's Go, some of it there's some C code as well, because they're doing some pretty low level things to monitor what's going on, inside containers.
So it seems you actually really enjoy educating people on low level things like the container implementations and the syscall talk that you recently gave. Um, Kind of what motivates you there? Is this people asking you questions and you kind of try to produce content to answer it to a wider group? Is this just stuff you're super excited about? How do you choose what you're going to talk about?
Yeah, so that's it. It started with the container talk. I saw a sort of like an early version of that by Julian Friedman from IBM, quite early on when I was first dealing with containers, and it just clarified everything for me. And I thought I want to kind of replicate this. I had to go away and do it myself at home, and then I thought, this. Well, I spoke to Julian and I said, "Do you mind if I, borrow this idea?" And he was kind of, "Go for it. I don't really like, writing code live." so, so I kind of took it and I guess evolved it, and it turned out that people seem to really enjoy it. I can't tell you how much I love the comments that I get after doing a talk, and I think people really like seeing something really sort of something that they thought was maybe kind of magic or pretty, some kind of thing over there that I don't really know what happens, and being able to get to the sort of the core internals of something. I think it's really powerful, and other people seem to like it as well.
So, is there a trick to taking something that's as complex as, say, syscalls or networking and presenting it in a way that make people understand it? It still feels like magic, but they appreciate the presentation afterwards, because I think that's the feeling that everybody takes away from your presentations is that's absolute magic, but I can do that too.
Yeah, yeah. I think my process is to sort of just try building things. I'll think, well, what happens if I try and build this thing, or if I try to kind of reproduce what's going on, and or if I try using something, what will happen? So it's kind of experimentation, and I'll try lots of things, and something seems to always leap out and say, over here, this is really interesting, and it's kind of easy enough to write in a few lines of code. So I can remember it, because obviously I have to be able to memorize the code to type it in when I'm doing a talk. um, and yeah, I just somehow end up exploring something, thinking this is really fascinating, like the syscalls thing, getting into ptrace. And I'd heard of ptrace, I had an idea what it was, but when you start trying it and exploring it, you think, yeah, this is really powerful. I get this.
Yeah, the first time I ever used like strace or ltrace and like got to see all the syscalls and library calls that were being made by processes, you're like, I have superpowers.
Yeah, yeah. And looking at what's inside the slash proc directory as well, it's just a kind of gold mine of crazy, interesting things that the kernel's doing. And yeah, I think there's all sorts of fun things in there.
I love the proc directory and just kind of digging through. I hate that it's not very well documented, and even looking through the Linux source code to figure out like how does this counter get incremented? Like what does that really mean? And it's
Yeah.
often complex.
Did you see Jess Frizzell was just on Twitter today asking people about their opinions on, if slash proc had a better API, what would it look like? Or what would people like to see from a better API to slash proc?
Yeah, and it's actually really amazing how many of the tools that people use every day, like Top and HTOP and others that really are just interfaces over the top of that proc directory.
Right, right.
But yeah, I think there needs to be better documentation on some of that stuff for sure. There's actually a really cool GitHub repo. I'm trying to remember this off the top of my head. I think it's github.com/0x8x Linux hyphen insides. and it walks through a lot of stuff like the assembly during the boot up process and how like a process actually gets called by the kernel. It's got some stuff on C groups and things like that, and some of the internal uh, data structures and things that are used. So if anybody's like interested in like really deep kernel internals, that's a super cool repo to check out.
That does look amazing.
But I don't think they have anything on the proc directory, which would be awesome.
I'm just looking at it now. Yeah, they've got some things like C groups, which probably goes into, probably has to look at slash proc. But yeah, it looks amazing.
Interrupts and interrupt handlers and all kinds of like really, really deep level kernel stuff.
And how you approach looking at these things that are lower level and we don't get to look at on a daily basis unless we make an effort and have the curiosity to do so. And so the way you approach looking at these things also I think makes a big difference. For example, looking at Liz talk about the syscalls, there was a moment when you outputted some stack to the screen to the terminal, and I was looking at that. I was like, okay, that's what the output is. And you were looking at that and thinking, no, those are duplicates. I would have been thinking, well, that's how it is. And you were thinking, well, those are duplicates. That doesn't sound right. So let's look more into it. I was just totally taken for granted that that's how it was.
Yeah, I think I might have had a certain amount of I don't know. I'm going to say storytelling license there, because I had actually seen the bit in the man page that says you've got these two different stop states and you can't tell the difference as the tracer. But it just made more sense as a story to do it that way, to say, oh look, here they're duplicate. Now I'm going to explain why they're duplicate and address that issue.
Yeah, but I think it highlights something important, which is sometimes when we are looking at something that's completely new, we can just take for granted that that's how it's supposed to work. But we should always have take a second look and question and inquiry and go deeper. I thought it was a good reminder to do that.
You know who I think is amazing at this is Julia Evans. Have you seen her?
Oh yeah,
her work, because she's so good at having that kind of curiosity, about how does a thing work. Amazing.
and
Yeah.
The thing that I love about that approach, with like kind of those quick graphics and things like that she creates is, it gives you like this really abstract understanding of it, but it gives you enough hooks where like if you wanted to dig a little deeper on one section, you could. And that usually tends to be the problem with these like really, really highly technical things, is it seems so broad you don't know where to start.
And I think she kind of takes the fear out of it somehow.
So yeah, I absolutely love her work. And if you are not following her on Twitter, you definitely should.
Mhm.
Yes, absolutely. I agree with that too.
Definitely.
So what's next on the list? Do you have any ideas for kind of what your next talk or blog post or something will be about?
Yeah. So I have a couple of ideas for things, and I was kind of raising the question on Twitter just the other day, because I'd really love to hear from other people, their ideas of things that they kind of think, yeah, that's that area over there. I really don't know how it works. So if you're listening and there's something you think might be able to be explained in 60 lines of code, let me know. You don't have to, count the lines of code. But yeah, so I'm certainly thinking about maybe doing some more about debugging, maybe doing some more with ptrace and kind of manipulating processes with ptrace. Maybe even doing something about regular expressions, because I think they're a bit, but I haven't figured out how to kind of take away the difficult bits of regular expressions, But those are a few ideas that I've got on the top of my head at the moment, and I'd definitely be keen to hear about other things.
What about like something, being you have a networking background, what about something networking related? There's a lot of there's a lot of stuff going on in kind of the cloud networking space now, CNI, and you've got things like Flannel and Calico and all of these
Yeah,
things that kind of create these mesh networks and things. Like understanding that a little bit might be
yeah.
interesting.
I should really understand flannel and calico better than I currently do. So actually, that's a really good idea. I should probably dig into those more. There's so many things. It's there's a world of things out there to learn about.
Yeah, finding the time for all of them is the challenge.
Yeah, yeah.
That's exactly the problem. Finding the time. It's impossible. There's so many things to learn.
I think also another cool topic I think for people would be understanding Linux schedulers. I don't know how you would implement that in Go code, but I think that that's something that I find like having discussions with people too. That it's kind of like a dark magic that just occurs, right? You like run this thing, and you just Linux does that, and there's kind of the whole concept of schedulers, and there's different scheduler choices, and then you get into real time scheduling.
Mm, yeah, and I think it's quite widespread that people have sort of misunderstandings about threading and concurrency. And well, I mean, there's been some amazing talks about concurrency and books about concurrency. That try and explain some of those things. But it always used to bug me when people would say, "Oh, I'm going to make my code more performant by making it, highly multi-threaded." And you kind of thinking, well, unless it's blocking on something, how many CPU cores have you actually got? Just throwing threads at a problem doesn't necessarily make things run faster. In fact.
Yeah, then you also have contending for resources, right? Like if both of them need access to the same resource, one can be blocking, waiting for another. And it actually kind of reminds me a little bit of the reverse of that when like hyper-threading came out and multi CPU motherboards and then multi-core, the number of people are like, I'm gonna get, a board with two processors, so all my stuff runs faster. It's like that's not 100% accurate.
Yeah. It might.
It just depends on the way it was written. I mean, no doubt you could run more than one thing at one time, right? If you had two completely isolated processes, but people just automatically assume that some, CPU hog program that they used was going to be magically faster because they have more cores.
Yeah.
But I mean, and that's all part of our growth, right? I think that you don't know what you don't know.
Definitely, and the other thing that I always feel is in the same category is blocking. You see so many people who kind of uh, throw locks at code without necessarily really having a strategy for it.
That's my
And
coding plan. Add a mutex.
yeah, what could possibly go wrong? Throw another lock at it.
So, do you have somewhere like a poll or something where you're having people submit suggestions? Because we could definitely link to it in the show notes and have people suggest topic
Oh,
ideas.
that's a really good idea. Yeah, I could have a poll. I could have, yeah, I will set something up so that in the show notes we can have a poll. Great idea.
So, I think it would be really interesting, especially because I think a lot of us came from you know dynamic languages and things like that, and Go is a lot closer to C in the sense of being a systems language. So I think there's a lot of people learning a lot of these things that I think a lot of the people who came from the systems programming background take for granted. They learned C, they've written syscalls, they kind of understand the kernel and how it operates, and even networking. And there's a much larger group of people probably migrating to Go that this is all new information for. So I think it's really valuable that people like you and Julia are trying to help educate people in these things in ways that they can easily understand.
Hopefully, yes.
Kernel man pages are not the best way to learn stuff. I mean, they're there. I mean, in some cases, it's the only option, but some of those things are extremely hard to learn on your own unless you're already familiar with the domain or really want to do like a lot of digging and playing and learning through failure.
Yeah, which again takes time.
So you've done some Alexa apps, haven't you?
Oh yeah, yeah. So over New Year, I was at a house party with some friends over a few days, and somebody had an Alexa. What do you call them? Echo, and I just kind of ended up sort of hacking together the beginnings of a skill, and I wrote about it on Medium, and that has actually ended up being kind of one of my most popular posts, even though it's not actually in Go, it's in Python. But yeah, that was quite a lot of fun, and I did a few follow-up posts. And it's basically kind of my journey of writing my first Alexa skill, and now that's something I would love to have a bit more time to sort of explore voice apps and, you know, actually using uh, the shims so that you can write voice apps in Go, which I haven't tried yet, but I really, really want to.
So
So
I'm curious. Go ahead, Brian.
I was just going to ask what the app did, and then as a follow-up question, did they invite you back afterwards?
So yeah, it's a group of friends. We've kind of always had New Year together for like the last many years. And now a lot of people have got kids as well, so the group's got bigger and bigger. And my skill, the idea, what I thought would be really fun would be, oh, I could just have a list of the names, and like particularly for the kids, they could hear Alexa saying that, they were in the house. So it was just going to say, you know, Anne, John, Matthew, Charlotte, whatever, are in the house. And then I started adding commands to say that people were leaving and that other people were arriving. And the idea is that it's supposed to kind of keep a list of who is in the house. And yeah, we ended up looking, not actually at the same holiday, but we ended up looking at, oh, could we keep track of this with the router? I'm saying that in the English way, I should say router. Look at whose mobile phones are connected to the router and using that to maintain the list of who is in the house. Didn't quite get as far as doing that, but I thought that would be kind of fun and also a bit Big Brother.
Yeah, a little bit creepy. That's cool.
Yeah.
I was going to ask if there was any particular reason why you didn't choose Go, and nothing against you having done that in any other language, but I'm more curious to know if, in the case you did evaluate Go for this project and just Go it wasn't up to par.
So I don't know if this is still the case, but Amazon certainly at the time supported Node and Python, and I think maybe one other. Certainly those two, of which Python I was by far the most familiar with. So that was kind of the natural choice, just to hack something together. But now there are some shims and some libraries and tooling out there to let you kind of implement the real function in whatever language you like. There's one called Apex that I've heard is really good, to let you write your functions in Go, and then you've just got this sort of little shim thing in Python or whatever that calls your function. It's all done with containers,
Turtles all the way down.
Yeah.
So in our email that we send out, where we talk about kind of the things you're interested in working on and all that good stuff, we were talking about a couple of tools that you've written. One of them was Kubernetes security benchmarking.
Yeah, Kubebench. Yeah. Shall I talk a bit about that?
Yeah, I'm really interested in that. I know Brian and I are big Kubernetes fans. Carlicia, is Fastly using Kubernetes at all?
Not that I know of. At least the work that I do doesn't use any Kubernetes. Docker, yes. Kubernetes, no. But in some other parts of the company, maybe. I don't know.
See, you make the name sound so much better. Say Kubernetes again.
Kubernetes.
See, the first time I think you said like Kubernetes, like you had like a nice inflection on it, and it sounded, you know.
I think I mispronouncing a letter or two the first time, and it sounded exotic to
It
you, but
did.
it
It did.
was just wrong. The second time I pronounced it right.
And I'm gonna go with the first time was right. I like that. It sounds more elegant.
Whenever you want me to say it, I'll say it.
I think I flip between Kubernetes and Kubernetes, and I really don't know which is right. It's a bit like schedule and schedule. I genuinely don't know which of those two is the right pronunciation.
I don't think it matters in the end. Let's come up with more different ways of pronouncing it.
Anyway, I was going to talk about Kubebench, wasn't I?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So there is an organization called the Center for Internet Security, and they write kind of guidelines. They're called benchmarks for how to configure software to implement best practices for security. And they've got I guess over the last maybe 2 or 3 months, they released a benchmark for Kubernetes. And so basically, the guidelines are kind of 200 pages of you should check whether or not you're running with this option, and you should check that this flag is set to 0, and you should check that this other flag is set, is set to something else. And so it's a lot of tests that we have with Kubebench automated. And it's a Go program that implements these tests, and the tests themselves are written as YAML files. So that as the spec evolves, as the benchmark evolves, it should be easy for us to update the test files. And it should also be possible for people to add their own custom tests if they want to. Essentially, the tests are mostly calling out to some kind of, say, for example, calling out to PS and checking the results of PS to see what executables are running, that kind of thing. So it's a pretty flexible tool. But the idea is then you can just run it on all the nodes in your cluster and get a report in a kind of standard format, either some text output or JSON output, to report on how well your Kubernetes nodes are complying with the benchmark. So it should just automate something that would otherwise be impossibly too much work to do by hand.
Yeah, we've dealt with CIS benchmarks in the past. Eric and I both at previous companies, and it's really painful, really ugly. So having that automated is awesome, and especially for something as modern as Go, or sorry, as modern as Kubernetes.
Yeah, and I think it will be evolving. There's so many, potential security. I'm not trying to say that Kubernetes is insecure, but there are ways that you can set it up that could be very insecure. So just checking that isn't, like, for example, whether or not you allow privileged containers. Just checking whether or not you've got that turned on or not is probably a good idea.
So Robin in the Go Time channel asks, what are the top most important Kubernetes security measures?
Great question. How long have we got? um, I did a webinar with a colleague, I guess maybe a month or so ago now, about exactly this question. So I guess very briefly, we've just been talking about Kubebench and the settings and things like, have you set up authentication between your nodes, or so they've got to use certificates. Are you allowing privileged containers or not? That kind of thing that you configure as you're installing or running the Kubernetes executables themselves. But it's broader than that, in that you want to be vetting the container images that you run on your cluster, vetting them for vulnerabilities. A lot of organizations have policies around how severe the vulnerabilities are that they're allowed to run, or blacklisting and whitelisting, all that kind of thing. And because these days everybody's deploying code really fast, they've got CI/CD, so you want to automate all these, checks to make sure that your CD system isn't deploying something live that contains some terrible, terrible, well-known vulnerability. Secrets management is another sort of important aspect. Kubernetes fairly recently, I'm going to say it was in 1.7, I think, started encrypting secrets. But before that, secrets were kind of by default being passed around in the clear, which is pretty scary. And if you really want to take your security seriously, you might want to be looking at runtime profiling, like we were talking about before, using things like SecComp or AppArmor, maybe using SE Linux. There's so many different things you can do to make your cluster more secure.
SE Linux is one of my favorite things in the world to disable.
This program won't run. Disable SE Linux.
That's what the documentation said. If you have problems, disable SE Linux.
Well, I think that's probably the biggest issue with security, right? Is the inconvenience factor. And even say SecComp and things like that. So for anybody who's not familiar with what like a SecComp profile is, and this, Docker creates like a standard one for you, but it basically controls the system calls that the process in the container is allowed to make. And you can actually modify this and make it more restrictive or less restrictive to kind of limit what the process can do, interacting with the kernel. But most of the time, people have problems with things, and they're like, "Oh, this is a pain. Enable everything."
I think that's exactly right. Yeah, making these things easy is a huge challenge. Easy to use, huge challenge.
And it's really hard because like during development time, you're trying to deliver business value, right? So you're constantly trying to get your features done, and every time you get hung up and something isn't working the way you expect it to, and you do a bunch of debugging, and you're like, "Oh, this syscall's disabled." By the time you've done that a couple of times, you're like, "All right, this is becoming a huge pain. It's slowing me down. I'm just going to enable everything, and I'm going to get done what I need to get done, and then I'll secure it." But then after the fact, it becomes really hard to go through and like reverse engineer your software and figure out what system calls it makes.
Now, shouldn't that be something that we should be able to automate? I mean, we can read code, and machines can read code. It should be relatively simple enough. I say not knowing shit about it, but it should be relatively simple enough to just go through and say, all right, I've scanned this app and it uses these 9 syscalls. I need to add this profile to my Docker container. Is
Jess
that a
Gazelle
thing?
did a blog post, and I think maybe a talk as well, but certainly a blog post where she goes through that whole process of automating, capturing all the syscalls that I think she was running Chrome in her example. Just capturing everything that it did over some period of time under normal use, and then generating a SecComp profile out of that. So it's kind of a really interesting thing to go and find. We should add the link to that to the show notes. And one of the things that a product like Aqua can make easier for enterprises, because it can basically learn it automatically.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
So is it similar to like intrusion detection training where you run it in like a safe mode for a while and it doesn't really stop anything, but it learns normal behavior?
Yeah. So we have an audit mode and an enforce mode, and there's also like a sort of learning period when you first run a new container image.
That's awesome.
It's pretty cool. I can't take credit for the product because the team, the team mostly in Israel actually, they really kind of built this product. And when I first saw it, like I said, I'm just like, this is really clever. It's really, really clever.
So what's your next big talk coming up? What's the next conference you're talking at?
That's a great question. I do know what my next one is, but I'm not sure whether they've announced me yet, so I'm not sure I can say. I guess
secret.
some that I know that I can talk about are Container Camp in London coming up very soon, and Container Shed not long after. Container Camp is only in a couple of weeks' time, so probably just about the time this podcast gets released, it'll probably be the same day as Container Camp. But that's always a really fun kind of fairly small group of people talking about containers, and small as in, it's not like Overcon, it's not thousands of people, it's more like, I don't know, 100 or 200 or something.
What's been your favorite conference to attend so far? What's the conference that has the best atmosphere, the best fun?
Oh, you mean apart from GopherCon? Because obviously that would be a terribly suck up thing for me to say GopherCon. So I'm not going to say GopherCon.
Besides GopherCon.
Besides GopherCon, the KubeCon in Berlin was amazing. There was a real sense of like Kubernetes is really going somewhere. There's this huge community of people really, getting together to move Kubernetes from kind of, I'm going to say science project into like something really solid that enterprises can actually use. I thought that was really fun, and the community is really kind of supportive, and it's kind of interesting to see Google handing over the control to the community in what I think seems to be a really good way. I think they're doing a really good job of it. Without just throwing it over the wall, they're kind of gradually getting more and more people from outside of Google involved, which is great. And I guess kind of similar to what, well, not quite the same, but the same kind of issue exists with Go. It's interesting to hear the Go community getting bigger and moving outside of Google quite a bit. I guess the other conference that I really enjoyed, I guess a couple of years ago now, well, sort of 18 months ago, was the DockerCon in Seattle. Just huge and so kind of glitzy, I guess. It was really fun.
I haven't been to a DockerCon yet.
Oh,
I haven't either.
should. Yeah, it's fun.
Comes down to time. That's always the hardest thing, is time and how much you want to be away from home. There's entirely too many conferences to attend.
I've got quite a few in the next couple of months that are in London, so that's convenient for me. Like Velocity, I've got here and in New York actually, but the one and there's Container Camp and there's Container Shed as well. So we have quite a good conference scene happening here in Europe.
Yeah, there's really not much going on here in Tampa.
No.
Not much at all.
I think Orlando gets some stuff. I mean, from a security perspective, we have what's the name of the group that does the CISP certification? They're based out of Clearwater. I think we got a lot of healthcare stuff here. No big fancy tech conferences here. We don't even host our own conferences here. How bad is that?
It's pretty bad.
Well, would you have the venue for it? I mean, you need a pretty big venue.
Yeah, there's
Yeah. We could do it. We won't, but we could.
Yeah. So, who wants to talk about interesting Go projects and news?
OMG.
OMG. All right, I'm guessing you have a good one.
OMG. I do. It's a tiny one, but it packs a lot of punch. So if you've used the terminal, like most of us have, and you've come across Powerline, you'll know that Powerline is a Python app that makes lots of cool things appear in your terminal and gives you information, context-sensitive information as you change around and execute commands. And Powerline's great, but it's a little slow, especially as you add more and more things to your command prompt. Well, someone, Jan, Janne, Jan on GitHub, ported Powerline to Go, and it is stupid fast. So I've added it to all of my machines in this last week, and it just makes me brilliantly happy. Powerline. So it's at github.com/JUSTJANNE/Powerline-Go. Crazy fast. And it's written in Go, so you can extend it yourself.
I don't even know what time it was at night when Brian messaged me like, dude, you have to see this.
I don't know. I use Fish, and I'm pretty happy. It seems that all the info that I get from this power line, I get with my fish shell. I don't see that I can benefit from having this on top of fish.
All
Do you
right,
think?
elevator pitch me on fish. See,
Yeah,
I did
Oh
I want
my
to hear
god.
the fish pitch.
I
I'm in.
did
Let's listen.
I did the bash to ZSH transition, but I haven't tried fish, so sell it. It's all on you.
Oh, I went from bash to Z shell and then fish, and fish is has can't compare. It's so much better than the other ones. Every once in a while I have to switch to bash, but it's so easy. I just type bash and I get my bash shell to run some commands. That's not compatible with fish, but then I go back to fish. Well, talking about the practical stuff. Uh, it's very easy to install. It's very easy to use. I forgot what they call it now, profile or templates, like different templates you can use to customize how your shell will look and behave, what kind of info you get. It's so easy to go from one to the other. It has a UI actually. So you boot the UI and through the UI you can configure different things, which is nice because you get to see all the possible configurations that you can tweak. It's so user friendly. It's ridiculous. No comparison with C Shell. It's such a pain to change anything and install different templates.
I get scared of things that have like loads of configuration because I just think I'm going to spend way too much time trying to configure it. I just want things to work.
Yeah, but it does just work out of the box.
Yeah.
If you want to change the color or something, you there are templates. But it just works out of the shell. It's super light, super fast, and it's really cute. Sold? Eric, are you switching?
I don't know. I'll look at it. How's that?
Oh,
I'll try it.
I consider that a win. You will look at it.
I think in general I need to rethink my workflow. And it's weird. Like in my early development days, I was constantly tweaking my workflow, the tools I use, the configurations for them, and things. But like I think my shell and Vim configs have been around for like ages now, and I think they're showing their age and bloat. So I'm highly considering kind of like wiping everything and starting over. So maybe fish will be on the table for that.
I highly recommend it.
And any other things that people want to sell me on. But you're not taking away my i3 window manager. I'm keeping that.
Yeah, you can
No.
keep that.
This week I think it was Nate Finch had a tweet and I copied it to have like a touch bar button on my MacBook Pro
yeah.
that does the if Eric isn't nil, convenience
Yeah, how
button.
awesome.
That's on my MacBook.
I think that's the only fun thing about the touch bar is being able to kind of come up with your own things. But the no escape key kills me.
Yeah, I love that. Is that an actual thing? Is it an actual button you can put on the keyboard? I wasn't sure if he was just joking.
No,
Oh, you
so
mean the external one that you can plug in? Yeah.
yeah, the newer MacBook Pros have like a touch screen bar thing, and you can program it to have new buttons there that do things.
Ah, okay, that was neat.
Yeah, it was a real app that he built.
So wait, you can program one of those buttons to be the escape keys then?
Yeah, there is an escape key there all the time, nearly all the time.
Nearly
Every time
all
I
the
look for an
time.
escape key, it's where I expect it to be.
Okay.
But sometimes you get some pretty fun things like, I don't know, you're writing a tweet and it suggests some emoticons for you, or like if you're watching a video, you can scroll through the video on the touch bar, which I think is quite
Hmm,
fun.
Hmm.
I didn't know that. That sounds really neat.
So
So wait. Are you
Wait.
jumping to the next one? I want to go first.
I was just going to mention something related to it's not Go specific, but I was going to mention something related to the playing with changing up your work environment.
Do it.
Do it.
So, did anybody see the program? I don't know how you pronounce it. ONI, and it's like an Electron interface over the top of NeoVim.
Yes. Saw it, downloaded it, used it.
What'd you think? That's on my list to play with because I like the idea of IDEs, but I also love them. So
Link,
Yeah.
please.
It
I
it
just
didn't
dropped it
add
in the
it.
channel.
Yeah, it didn't add enough to NeoVim for me to use a GUI.
Hmm.
I mean, my NeoVim setup is really happy for me, and this just didn't add a ton, and it doesn't have a Go backing stuff yet. You can use your NeoVim plugins, but you're not gaining anything yet in Go because they don't have Go bindings. It looks like it's going to be cool, but
Hmm.
not yet.
Okay, Carlicia, what was it you had?
Yeah, I want to cite this project because it's command line related. This project called Expander with two R's at the end. And what it does is you install it and then you tweak your editor. And whenever you type out a function call that returns anything, it will add the error on that function and put the curly brackets there for you and add return error. I guess it will expand it so to add the error, not just anything. So you'll get the if error
Nice.
bracket thing, and and you either return the error or return the log. I don't know how you configure that, but it looks like magic, and we do that all the time, so it would be pretty neat. The only issue is that it's only available for Emacs. So, but they are looking for people to contribute to do the extension for Vim and other IDEs.
Now you want to hear how even more related this is to the conversation we just had?
Uh-huh.
The person who created that is also the creator of i3 Window Manager.
That is cool.
I'm glad you said it before I did.
Michael Stapleberg.
Yes,
Who I got to meet at GopherCon, and it was a little bit like hero worship.
it was. And he brought stickers.
Yeah, he brought us stickers.
That is cool.
Very excited that we talk about i3 so much on Go Time.
Yeah, as soon as they do that extension for VS Code, I already installed it. I just can't use it.
All right, I've got another one. More projects. You know, I have this absolute fascination with distributed tracing, and I've been playing with all the different distributed tracing tools over the last couple weeks. And this is one that came out quite a while ago. It started coming out quite a while ago, but I wasn't really sure where they were going with it. And now it's usable and kind of awesome. So Uber has released their open tracing collection system called Jaeger, which is Yaeger, Jaeger, and it is really awesome. So the tools are fast and relatively easy. I mean, in terms of distributed tracing, relatively easy to implement, and the UI that you can use to look at your traces is just killer. It's so nice.
That's neat.
That's one of the ones I haven't played with yet. Yeah, the distributed tracing is huge for modern projects. And I remember playing with like some of the like Dapper and Zipkin and things like that early on. So what kind of sets this apart?
The UI is really nice. It's clean. It's easy to use. It supports um, Open Tracing's API directly, which means you don't actually have to use Jaeger's Jaeger's SDK to instrument your code. You just use the regular Open Tracing Go bindings, and then Jaeger takes those and it's the reporter collector part. So because there's a standard for Open Tracing, Jaeger takes all of those traces, and you just set Jaeger as your reporter and collector. I have a special treat though, and this will only work probably for the live crew. But if you go to 2018.gophercon.com, you can see a boring blank Buffalo web app page. And
Wait, did you say 2018?
Yeah, 2018.gophercon.com. And there's nothing exciting there other than the fact that it's a brand new beginning Buffalo web app. But then go to trace.gophercon.com, and I have an instance of Jaeger up, and you can see all of the traces that have happened in the last hour or whatever it is. So you get an idea of what the UI looks like. Now they're boring traces because I don't have anything running in the background. It's literally just one request, but it gives you a sense of what the UI looks like. And unfortunately, by the time this goes to air, this will probably be down. So you'll just have to go to the Jaeger website and see. But for the live listeners, you get the special treat of seeing what Jaeger looks like before I rip it down.
Can you post the link in the Slack channel?
Absolutely.
And I love the fact that you're using the GopherCon domain as the test bed.
Well, so it's relatively related. Is one of the things that I'm doing to really get deep into my new job at Microsoft is learn all of the pieces of their infrastructure. So I'm using GopherCon's 2018 website as the way to do that, because why would I build another pet store application when I can work in a domain that I care about? So I'm over engineering GopherCon, and that's kind of fun. It's all microservices and distributed tracing, and we could do it with a Hugo web app, but that'd be boring.
I'm gonna break out Durbuster tonight. I'm gonna find what else you're hiding there.
Shh! Don't tell anybody.
All right. Did we have any other interesting projects, news, articles that are must see?
Nope.
All right. Free Software Friday.
I got one.
All right. Let's hear it.
Again, it's like I have these problems over and over in my life. It's kind of sad, but I'm having a continuing problem keeping my files in one place in sync. And I used Unison today, which is just the age-old standard file synchronizer. And it differs from rsync in that Unison is bidirectional and rsync is one directional. And it's so fast. So thank you to the Unison team who have continued to update that app for 15 or 20 years. Yay.
I haven't used that in a long time. One of these days I'll actually set up backups.
Strongly recommended. They're good for you.
Don't look at me like that, people. There's a RAID.
RAID is not a backup. Don't make me say it twice.
I mean, it's better than nothing, though.
Marginally.
So, Carlicia, do you have anything this week?
I don't.
How about you, Liz? Do you have a project or maintainer you want to give a shout out to?
Well, this isn't like a super new thing, but I think Istio is really interesting.
Yes.
So Istio is kind of sidecars for containerized services, for microservices. But I think it could mean that people end up not having to write so much code to set up their microservices, and that seems like a really cool thing. I'm in no way, I know a tiny, tiny little bit about Istio, but it's something I really want to understand much better.
Now that falls in the service mesh category, right?
It does, yes.
Which is one of those hodgepodges of terms that you wonder, what the hell is a service mesh?
Oh, maybe that's a topic for a talk for me.
It is. It's probably a great topic for a talk. And it just occurred to me when I woke up this morning, the first tweet I made was wishing Mark Bates a happy birthday. So we should probably shout him out on the show too, because we talked about Buffalo already. And
oh yeah,
we love keeping the people in our community feeling special on their birthday. So happy birthday, Mark. We hope
Happy birthday, Mark. And
we hope you'll hit puberty soon.
I was gonna say I'm just glad we don't have to sing.
I think even though most people will hear this a week late, they should still wish him a happy birthday on Twitter.
Absolutely. No matter when you hear this, just reach out to @MarkBates on Twitter and wish him a happy birthday.
Can we do like a Twitter storm in like 2 weeks' time?
Oh.
In commemoration of Mark Bates' birthday. I think he'd appreciate that.
That's brilliant.
I think that everybody should send him a clip of you smashing a guitar, because he was the only one that did it, right?
Oh, shut up. Shut up.
Somebody asked that on Twitter. I forgot who. if
did.
anybody had a clip of Brian Kettleson smashing his guitar, because
He did do
nobody
it.
saw it.
I hate you all.
That's just because it took you
Sorry.
less time to break yours.
I was right there.
Oh,
Steve
wait,
says he
Steve,
has one.
Steve says he has one. Post it or it didn't happen, Steve. I'm under the gun here.
Uh,
All right.
so
Ulysses Flynn said he saw him. I trust him.
I did see Brian smash his guitar.
Well,
I'm
I don't
just giving
trust
him a hard time.
you. You will cover
Oh.
for Brian.
That's just rough.
I love Brian, but I don't know if I'd lie for him.
We're done with this damn show.
So mine for today, I don't know how you pronounce it. I think it's Azaria. But she is Fox0x01 on Twitter. She's a security person I follow. Super, super smart. But she has this awesome like 7-part series on her website, Azaria, AZERIA-labs.com, for like writing ARM assembly. There's like another 2-part series on if you want to learn how to actually compromise ARM processes and write shell code and stuff like that. But learning a little bit about ARM processors and how they differ from Intel processors, and even learning a bit about assembly. If you're interested in that type of stuff, that blog series is really, really good. We'll link to it in the show notes, and I will drop it in our Slack channel for people who are listening right now. Carlicia beat me to it. There it is.
This is cool, Eric.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of, even like, I don't think anybody should you don't have to learn to build software and assembly or in C and things like that. But I think having kind of like a surface level knowledge of things a level or two below you definitely makes you a better engineer. Because a lot of stuff are leaky abstractions, right? Like, it's great when everything is working perfectly, but when it's broken, like having a rough idea of what's happening under the hood can often at least lead you in the right direction of diagnosing it.
Yeah.
Do we have any other Free Software Friday things, or are we
No.
wrapping this thing up?
Yeah, I'd like to thank Steve St. Martin for being my hero.
And proving that it did happen. You broke yours the right way, so it happened faster.
That is awesome.
All right, so I think it is time to wrap this show up. We're actually early, which is awesome. Thank you so much, Liz, for coming on the show and for all the great content you're producing and helping make all of us better engineers.
It's been really fun to be here.
Absolutely.
Great.
Thank you.
When I grow up, I want to give talks half as engaging as yours.
Agreed.
You do. Your Golang UK one with the Game of Thrones. Brilliant. Brilliant.
I can't wait to see that.
So huge thank you to all of our listeners. Definitely share the show with friends, family, colleagues. We are at GoTimeFM on Twitter. If you have suggestions or questions, hit us up on github.com/GoTimeFM/ping. And with that, goodbye, everybody. We'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, that's it for this episode of Go Time. Tune in live on Thursdays at 3 p.m. U.S. Eastern at changelog.com/live. Join the community and Slack with us in real time during the shows. Head to changelog.com/community. Follow us on Twitter. We're at GoTimeFM. Special thanks to Fastly, our bandwidth partner. Head to fastly.com to learn more. Also, Linode. We host everything we do on Linode servers. Head to linode.com/changelog. GoTime is edited by Jonathan Youngblood, and the theme music for GoTime is produced by the mysterious Breakmaster Cylinder. We'll see you again next week. Thanks for listening.